Welcome back to Shaw TV's live coverage of the Ward 7 by-election. We are live here in studio with Sean Shaw, analyzing and debating the results. We will also be posting results from the polls as soon as they come in from our man on the street in City Council chambers, or actually the lobby outside of City Council chambers, Simon Hyatt. Right now we have the results from the advanced polls and mobile polls, and there they are on the screen. These are your top two contenders at this time. Well, what do you think, Sean?
Well, I'm a little surprised, actually. I know I've expected Robin Bellamy to be near it at the top, and he's there. But with Mike Bazowie as the second, I expected actually to see Marin Lowen there.
As did I.
And I think a lot of people were around the city. So this is maybe an indication of the kind of campaign that Bazowie is running. He had a few billboards up and a lot of signs, and was going hard at it. So I mean, it's an indication that he was working hard out there as well.
Marin Lowen, of course, or Marin?
I think it's Marin.
Marin Lowen, close behind with only a few percentage points back, which is roughly equated to only 30 votes. And given that this is only the advanced poll, we're calling it the first poll of 9, that things could change radically.
Oh, I think so. This is a quarter probably of the total votes being cast, and you'll probably see a lot of these polls are where the senior special polls were as well. So, it's maybe an indication that Robin Bellamy had a good support of the seniors, as did Mike Bazowie. So there's still a lot to come. You have all the neighborhood polls, each of the 7 neighborhood polls that come. So.
Right now we're only looking at 862 votes cast, and if you're looking at, say, maybe the numbers of Ward 5, which equated to about 2,700, you're looking at maybe about a quarter of the vote, perhaps. But again, that's speculation. Who knows? What if this is the year that suddenly people just come out?
Maybe, yeah. At 7 o'clock, I think they said they had about 3,200 votes cast, so there was still an hour for more people to get out and vote. So.
And temperature could be a factor. We're in the third day of deep temperatures. Maybe people are just like, well, maybe not.
Yeah, if you got you're coming home to your family after a long day of work, maybe the last thing on your mind is to trudge out in -40 weather to get out to the voters' poll. So it could be a big factor as well for the number of people coming out and voting.
And this, again, strikes back to the whole issue of voter apathy and why people perhaps just don't care.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a by-election, if all you see is maybe a pamphlet in amongst all your flyers, maybe you're not going to take the time to read it, and the chances of seeing a candidate come to your door might be slim. In a month, you can only get to so many doors. So maybe a lot of people haven't seen a candidate or any indication there's an election going on. So that's a big factor.
Now, is door knocking in today's society, is it effective? It seems more often than not people are irritated when they have to get up from whatever they're doing and talk to somebody.
Well, I don't know about -40 weather if someone knock on your door, but I did run in the last civic election in 2009, and it was door knocking was the key to the campaign I ran. That's the only way really to get that one-on-one contact with a large number of people, and I think people appreciate it when someone comes to the door.
Yeah, and again, it's also good old-fashioned elbow grease too, because you can write all you want on your internet, on your website, but it's fairly impersonal. I agree with face-to-face eye contact. That I mean, I'd be much more inclined to vote for somebody who is making that kind of effort. It shows they care. Exactly.
I mean, and that's what people want to see, is that they want to feel like they're engaged and that what they say is important. And what better way to have that than have someone coming right to your door and asking you? So.
Yeah, and again, also, strategically looking for who you're going after. Again, the social media, all these new forms of communication aren't effective at getting seniors, and seniors are the ones actually who vote a lot more than, say, like the 21 to 35 demographic.
I'd agree. I think having a good website and being involved in the social media is important as a candidate in these days and ages, but nothing beats pounding the pavement and getting out and meeting people. That's still the number one way, I think, that you need to run an election and run a campaign.
And as opposed to, say, a provincial or a federal election, you have your 5 or 6 parties, and you have your ruling party versus your not so ruling party. And a lot of people like to cast the protest vote. They're very happy about the protest vote. That's what they're feeling. They are protesting the current, and that's just not an avenue in a civic election or by-election when you have no incumbent.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, a lot of the times people in provincial and federal elections are looking to cast a vote for a leader or the idea of a party, and it doesn't really matter who that candidate is. I mean, some people say you could put a lipstick on a pig in some ridings federally and get them elected. But in the civic election, it really comes down to knowing that person's name, and knowing that you feel comfortable with them as your elected representative.
Yeah, it's difficult to do through just billboards and pamphlets.
That's very impersonal, and pamphlets and billboards, sort of get lost in the mix. We get so much thrown at us in everyday life that they'll have some effect, but I mean, getting to the doorstep, I think, has the biggest effect.
And there's really no, at least in this by-election, nothing that's really been done by a candidate to really distance themselves from the rest of the pack. Anything that really put them ahead, a controversial viewpoint or a really effective or out-of-the-box campaign. We didn't really see that. No,
we really haven't. I mean, we've seen a lot of people sort of taking that outsider standpoint that we talked about, but it's just been 8 people giving what they want to see done in the city. And I mean, personally, I find that kind of refreshing to have just a debate of ideas. And that's been great to see. But again, it comes down to getting your name out to people. And I think we're seeing that in the results tonight. From my perspective, I think some of the strongest campaigns were from Bellamy, from Bazawi, and from Lowen. I mean, Bellamy declared back in November that he was running, and I'm sure he was out on the doorstep back then. I know that Marin Lowen was out there door knocking pretty close to Christmas time or just after it, and was out there busy. And Mike Bazawi, though he was sort of latecomer, he came, I think, registered in the last week before the closure of candidates being able to declare. He's been really effective at getting billboards up around the area. He's got the strong local presence with his local business, and he's had a number of signs out there as well. So he's gotten his name out that way.
Well, we have Simon Hyatt live at City Hall. He is currently cornered Marin, and we'll see what she has to say about what's going on so far.
All right, thanks very much, Jay. We are back live at City Hall in downtown Saskatoon. Very happy now to be joined by one of the candidates, Marin Lowen. Marin just got the first batch of results in 2 out of 10 polls reporting. Obviously, very early right now. You're sitting at third, but pretty close race up at top. Just first of all, your feelings tonight here on election night.
Well, we're feeling pretty positive about the way the campaign went. Obviously, in a civic by-election, really your main opponent is apathy because the turnout is pretty low, especially on a cold February day. So I think that's an issue that all candidates will be facing. But I feel pretty good about the way the campaign has gone, and people are friendly and receptive and interested in talking about the issues in the ward and the city. So it's been a very good experience.
And that's great to hear that people are receptive. I think one of the things that people are speculating about, there isn't necessarily too many huge issues that people are probably really up in arms about, and maybe also contributing a bit to that apathy you're talking about. Certainly one of the ones that I know you're passionate about is the curbside recycling. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you would like to see happen if you are lucky enough to be elected tonight?
Well, I'd like to see the city continue to pursue curbside recycling as a citywide service for Saskatoon. My opinion is that aside from the obvious ecological benefits, this is a fiscally prudent decision. And I know people are reticent to take on an additional cost with rising property taxes being an issue throughout the city. But in my mind, this is an issue of doing some short-term planning to eliminate some long-term woes. And in Saskatoon, we throw away almost 45% of what we throw away is things we could be recycling. So we're adding a lot to the landfill, and it's an incredibly expensive thing to maintain. And I think it's something that most people want.
And one of the other concerns, I guess, when it comes to the recycling is where does that leave Cosmo Industries, these other organizations that are involved, Sarcan. You see a plan that encompasses those, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And I think it's unfortunate that the debate about recycling in Saskatoon has sort of taken on a tone that these are mutually exclusive propositions, that we have to choose one or the other, and I don't think that's true at all. I think the city is moving in a good direction in terms of collaborating with Cosmo and Sarcan, and I understand from the most recent discussions at City Council that those groups are amenable to the direction the city is going, and that the city is rightly committed to carving out some space for them to continue to do what they do. And I heard that frequently on the doorstep in Ward 7 that was really important, and so I'm satisfied with the way the city is proceeding, and I think it's very good that we're going to be able to allow those organizations to continue to do what they do.
Now, when you were out there and talking to the voters in Ward 7, were there other issues that they were bringing up, things that people are concerned about, or is it kind of a hodgepodge of different things?
It's a bit of a hodgepodge, and there are some issues which are, I think, on the minds of residents because they're timely, and one is, of course, garbage pickup, and so some of those things are sort of coming up because there is, snow clearance, because they're in the daily lives of the people that are living there. But there were some bigger themes, and property taxes are a concern. I think a lot of people have the sense that the city is spending operating without a really focused agenda, and that it's has the potential of getting out of control. There are a lot of seniors in this ward who are in fixed incomes and want to stay in their homes, so that's of particular concern to them. And I think another big theme was the way people move around in the city, and congestion has become quite a germane issue in that part of the city. And so people, vehicular commuters and people who take the bus and people who ride bikes are all concerned about the way they move around the city and how it's becoming more difficult. So I think that's something the city needs to be thinking about too, long-term planning for transportation.
Excellent. So maybe just lastly, I'll get you to talk a little bit about, obviously you're quite a young woman. What motivated you to get into politics? You decided you wanted to be involved specifically at the civic level?
Well, Ward 7 is my home turf and my home community, so it's the area of the city that I feel most connected to and that I understand best, I think. And it's I see Saskatoon as being sort of at a pivotal point in our development. We're growing really quickly, and I just want to ensure that we're focused on growing wisely, and that we continue to set priorities when we grow and not follow the paths of others, but do it our own way and do it efficiently and in a way that ensures our quality of life. So that's sort of what motivated me to run at this point in time. Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, I want to wish you good luck. Thanks very much for taking a couple minutes to talk to us with candidate Marion Loewen. Still waiting for those final results. I know she's waiting anxiously. We'll send it back to the studio. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon Hyatt, on location at City Hall, gathering the results. We're here with Sean Shaw still, and Marion mentioned that Ward 7 is her home turf. Is that an advantage?
I think it can be. If in past elections and other campaigns we've seen where home turf becomes an issue. So if the candidates decide to make that an issue, yes, I think it can become a very big advantage to a candidate.
Yeah, for some people who are not necessarily in the know, it's actually quite a shock to say, no, you don't actually have to live in that area of the city to represent it.
Exactly. It's not a rule. As long as you're a resident of Saskatoon, I think for the last 6 months, you're allowed to run wherever you want in the city.
Now, Marion voted, or she mentioned, fiscal responsibility, always a factor. You mentioned previously, I think on your blog, that it came up at one of the voters' meetings that I think a question came up from the audience, and they said, can any of you candidates commit to a tax increase only based on the rate of inflation, plus or minus 2%. Yeah. And the answer to that was?
A resounding no from actually all 78 candidates who were there. The one wasn't there. But all of them said to a person that they wouldn't support holding property taxes to about 2% increase per year.
That's a very mature attitude.
I think so. It's one of my sort of pet peeves is when we see politicians in the heat of a campaign making a promise that I think they know they can't keep. And I mean, we have in the last civic general election, we had the majority of the elected councillors say, yes, I'll keep it to 2%, and promptly in the next budget, I think the increase was 4% or more, and we saw the same thing happen in the Ward 5 by-election in November. The winning candidate had agreed to that, said, I'll keep it below 2%, and 3 weeks later he was voting for a budget that increased it by just under 4%. So I think it is a mature way, and I think it's one of those things that will help voters feel a bit more comfortable with candidates. One of the things you always hear against politicians is they never keep their promises. So it's best not to make a promise you know you can't keep.
Exactly. And who's to say? We're the fastest growing city in Canada, according to recent statistics. It's difficult to say, no, we're going to keep the taxes here because, I mean, who knows what you've got? Infrastructure developing in the new areas, plus aging infrastructure in the older areas. It's really hard to see what you're going to face. Yeah,
it is. And I think, I forget what the percentage of the last budget was, but it was a significant amount of the increase was to help build the growing city, our new neighborhoods. And the double whammy that we have here in Saskatoon is we went through a long stretch in the 1990s of 0% increases, but less than 1% property tax increases, so probably below the rate of inflation. And we're having to catch up on our infrastructure that way, and that costs money. And unfortunately, that means that property taxes sometimes have to go up. But I think what we heard from the candidates throughout the campaign was they want to ensure that that's done in a responsible manner, that the dollars being spent wisely and that every dollar is accounted for.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from our live coverage here on Shaw TV of Ward 7. Results are coming in, and we'll be back with you in a moment to reveal and discuss.